Last week I explained why I found it necessary to stop my Apple Reminders experiment early and return to Todoist. And that means that right now in this week's episode, I'm going to give you my late 2025 Todoist setup. Now, my experiment with Apple Reminders was not a wasted exercise. What it did was remind me of just why Todoist is so good. Number one reason is it is totally trustworthy. In the 12, 13 years that I've been using Todoist, it has never let me down. As far as I can remember, it's never lost any tasks for me. I can find whatever I want, whenever I want it, simply by using Todoist Search, which is incredibly powerful. And I'll explain that a little bit later in this video. The other thing about Todoist is it is wonderfully clean and neat and tidy, and just is a joy to look at when you're planning the day, whichever time of day you do that, whether it's the morning or the evening. I just find it is just a very aesthetically pleasing task manager. So let me share with you how I have my projects, as Todoist calls them, set up. And if you want to learn more about that, I'll explain how you can do that in a moment. So I use a system called the time sector system. Now what this involves is creating a number of folders, or as Todoist calls them, projects. And those folders are this week, next week, this month, next month, long term and on hold. And then for the recurring tasks, I have my recurring critical tasks, which I'll explain again in a moment, my routines, and then you'll see on my list that I have my planning folder, which is what I use to plan out my projects by quarter, and that's just a table in Todoist. Now, why the time sector system? Well, the reason being is that many years ago I was doing it the traditional way, probably influenced by Getting Things Done, which was to organize everything by projects, and sometimes I was organizing by context. It was just a complete mess. The problem I always had with that is tasks just became disjointed. They came separated from one another, and it just became an organizational mess. What I realized was there are three questions to ask when you are processing your inbox. The first question is, what is it? The second question is, what do I need to do with it? And the third question, which to me is the most powerful question, is, okay, I now know what it is. I know what I need to do with it. Question then becomes, when? When am I going to do it? Now, we can't do everything in one day. We can't actually do everything in 1 week or 1 month. So I have to get very strategic about when I can realistically do the task based on what my appointments are, where I'm going to be, whether I'm on a business trip, whether I'm traveling, or whether I'm back here at the office. These are really critical things, but it actually comes down to time. When are you going to do the task? So my default is actually any new task that I get, I will default to next week, unless I know for sure that it needs to be done this week, in which case it will get put into my this week folder. It'll be labeled. I will then add a date, and it will pop up on the day that I believe I will have the time to do it. Now, it doesn't mean that every day is perfect. There are some days where the emergencies happen or the unknowns happen, and I have to reschedule a few tasks. But overall, this means that I'm not focused on hundreds of tasks each week. I have got a curated list of tasks that I believe can be done that week. So that's how my project setup is, my lists, if you like. So this week, right now, because I'm recording this on Wednesday, I only have a couple of things in there. I've been a very good boy this week and got a lot of things done. Next week is filling up quite rapidly now because I'm throwing stuff in there. Now, as you can see on my screen, you'll see that I've got something called tax info on 4 of the tasks in this folder. Now that's because we're coming to the end of the year and I have to do my W-8 US tax forms. And by the way, I have no relationship whatsoever with the United States. I don't own property there. I don't live there. But for some reason, every year I have to do a tax return, or every 2 years, I have to fill out a tax return form. I don't get it. But anyway, but this is critical because if I don't, then I'm going to get charged 30% tax from the US tax office. And then I believe from the research that I've done, it can take up to 10 years to get it back. So I need to do that. It's a critical thing, but I not need to do it this week. I'm in full week. Now, the reason I put this as tax info is quite simply, if I go to the search, let me just go out of that. We'll go into my inbox here. If I go into the search here, all I now need to do is type in tax, and those 4 tasks will come up right there so I can go straight to them. Now what you'll also see is underneath here I've got, well, I've actually opened up the task, you'll see that I've got a link directly to the email that tells me that I have to do this task. So I can click on that and it will bring up the email, in this case from Google, asking me for my residency tax information, which I have to send to Google every year. So that is something that I will do next week. There's no pressure. The deadline is, I think, the 31st of December. I'm recording this on the 10th of December. And this week is a working week. Next week is my first week off for the end of year, so I'll have plenty of time to do it next week. Hence, it goes into my next week folder. Then we got my this month. Now this month contains in here something that's really quite interesting. I have right here, if you can see on my list, my 2025 Christmas task list. Now, because I'm taking 2 weeks off at the end of the year, it doesn't mean that I'm just going to sun myself on a beach or go hiking in the mountains and just lose myself. I am going to be around and I've got little things that I want to do that I wouldn't ordinarily have time to do. Now this is where I actually use the sub-tasks. Now what I'm going to do with this is I will not be dating the sub-tasks. You just don't do that. I don't date the sub-tasks. I don't know when I'm going to re-wax my blue barber jacket. I don't know when I'm going to clean out the cupboards in the kitchen here in the office. So those things I don't know and I don't really care. I've got probably about 10 days in which to do these tasks. It's not going to be overwhelming and I can just pick and choose 1 or 2 every day. The barber jacket is something that I actually enjoy doing, but you've got to get tables set up, you've got to get the wax set up, you've got to get a sponge. It's really therapeutic, but it does take some time. What I will do though is when the time comes, I'm going to add a date to the main task, the parent task. What I will do is I will type in every day from the 15th December to, and then I'll put 31st of December. What's happening there now is, if I just open that up, you will see that this is just going to pop up every single day from the date that I set, which is the 15th, and it will stop on the 31st. So I don't have to check it off. I can check it off on every day, but I know it will come up the next day. So that's something that I will do probably when I do my weekly planning on Saturday. So that's one of the reasons why I love these kind of what I call mini projects, or because they don't need project folders. They're just a random list of tasks that I can do during the Christmas break, and I will enjoy it. I'm just going to get on and do it. But it's not going to come into play until I do my weekly planning. Next month is, now we're talking January. You can see here that I've actually got quite a lot of stuff already in my next week folder. And then here we've got my long-term and on hold. So I've got one coming up, which is to renew my password, and that's going to come up on the 1st of March. That's the reason why I've actually added a date of that, because it will take me several months, because the UK passport office is very slow, embarrassingly slow. So I know I need to give myself 4 or 5 months to get that through. So I'm going to start the process on the 1st of March 2026. Great. So I've got my notes in there, and that will come up on the 1st, just in case I miss it. There's one down here which is asking my wife RK to see if you can get a bottle of Laurent Perrier. We've got our Laurent Perrier champagne, so that can be checked off, which is actually quite nice. So those things are in there. Now, people always ask me, what do you have in that recurring critical tasks? Well, this is actually organized by date. Now, you can organize your tasks in many different ways, and I'll come to some of those in a moment. But here, the grouping, which is the most important here, is date, and sorting. I don't know why I got sorting by date. That can be default. But for the most part, the point here is the grouping. I just need to be able to use this for my review. What have I got coming up over the next, well, looking here, the next 2 weeks? But this is superb because I like to see this by date. What are the critical tasks that are coming up? Now, to me, a critical task is a no-brainer. It's got to be done. That's how I distinguish a critical task from a routine. Routines are not necessarily optional, but they are lower priority than these tasks here. These are related to my areas of focus and my core work. So this needs to be done as soon as, well, on the date that it actually comes up. Then I got my routines, and these are all, again, these are organized by daily, weekly, or monthly. And the only reason I do that is really quite because it just makes it easier to review and reorganize. And sometimes I just like clear action this day folder gets a little bit boring after 6 or 7 months when you see that every day. So I can change it to something different every few months when I'm getting bored of it. And it's just nice to keep everything kind of organized in the system. And then my planning, which is actually just sub-projects. Now, I've already got my project planner for 2026 already set up in here. It's now looking a little bit full, but I'm currently, these are just, I've thrown in ideas in here. Now, one thing you'll notice, there is no check marks here because these are just things that I'm planning around. And the reason why I use the board is because I can move stuff around very, very easily. Now, if you want to know how to create what I call a non-completable task, I hope you're keeping up, then the non-completable task, if you put an asterisk at the beginning and then space and then type your task, you will get what's called a non-completable task. So that's where I use my project planner, and I try to limit my projects to no more than 4 or 5 at the very most per quarter. So that's how my Todoist is organized. Now, how does this operate on a daily basis? Well, I have in here my favorites. Now, my favorites, I've not checked off any tasks except the one I just did a moment ago. So I can show you my workflow. So I treat my favorites as a workflow. So I begin the day when I'm writing my journal with today's objectives. And this is always only the red flags. And I'll come to the queries or the formulas for these just in a second. Hold on. So this will only ever show me my red flags, and I limit this to 2 per day. I will not allow more than 2 in any circumstances. I have in the past made it a bit more flexible and occasionally allowed it to have 3, but then I don't complete them. It's just too many. There's too many unknowns that are going to happen in the day, so I don't even bother now. I just restrict it to 2. Now, the good news about that is it really forces me to get good at prioritizing. I know what is important. I know what needs to be done today, and it can be no more than 2. And I mean must be done today. I will not go to bed until these 2 tasks are done. Now, the good news is I did outline this video, so now I can check that off. My objectives for today are done. But then after I've started my morning, I will then go into my today's focus. Now, these are the few tasks that I will do my absolute best to get done, but it wouldn't be the end of the world if I didn't do it. So think of this as like must do, that's today's objectives. Today's focus is should do's, and then all the unflagged tasks will come up into my today. So you'll notice here I've got 4 today's focus tasks, but in today I've got 9. So if I go in there, you'll see down at the bottom I've got some of my chores to do, which again doesn't really, these are what I will look could do's, you know, if I get time. Now, to be fair, washing the bathroom towels and watering the indoor plant, the office plant inside, yeah, that's okay. It doesn't take long to do, so I can do that. And reviewing calendar invites, I mean, we're talking maybe 10 seconds, comes up in my calendar, and also updating my admin sheets, if you like, at the end of the day. Again, that's not going to be a problem. That will get done. Also, I've got in my communications, clear my action this day folder, which I will also do probably later this afternoon. So looking at my day today, it is completely doable. Now, what you'll notice is I've got it organized by category or by label. Now, I think of these as my categories. I have time for writing today. I've already scheduled that in my calendar. I have communication and admin time on my calendar every day, so that these tasks, I have time set aside for doing these tasks. And then chores I generally do in between sessions of work. Now, to do that, what you can need to do is if you go again to your list, and this time in my today list, I am grouping by label, because I want to see this broken down into the categories of work that I do, so that I'm not looking at a long list of just random tasks. You know, I know when my calendar says it's writing time, the only thing I need to look at today is post to Substack notes. That's it. I have nothing else to do in writing. It's all done. I'm up to date. I don't need to panic about anything. This I know is accurate. And that's an important part of running any digital task manager. You want to make sure that A, you trust it, big thing, but secondly, that you are curating it every day and it doesn't take a lot of time. If you've got it organized, generally speaking, it will take you 5-10 minutes at the most to organize what you're doing. Now in my inbox, I've got one which my wife's company, our family company, if you like, FanCorp, we need to enable Gemini, and she asked me to do that last night, so I threw that into my inbox, which is an admin task. So when I come to something like this, and I know I should do it today because my wife asked me, so I can put this into my this week folder. It is for today. The priority is going to be probably 3. I'll do it later this afternoon. Label, it's admin, tap that, and that's done. So I'm now giving it a flag, and it will be added into my today now, underneath, like here, enable Gemini in my FanCorp account. So again, I will see that when I sit down to do my admin later this afternoon. It's not in play now. I'm doing these videos right now. So that's how I have my Todoist set up. Now, I know, because I've held you for long enough, that you may be curious about how I've got my filters set up. So let's go into my filters and labels. Now my labels are based around what I do. Now everyone has the bottom 4. We all have communications, planning, admin and chores. Those should be in your Todoist already. Beyond that though is actually very personal. Now I create content and I work with clients. Therefore I've got clients, writing, audiovisual and projects. What you'll also notice is these are actually in a prioritized order. Client work will always be my number 1 priority, then writing, then audiovisual, and then projects, because I don't generally have a lot of projects to do, probably 3 or 4 every quarter. So it's never going to be a high priority more often than not. Now, filters. I keep my filters very, very small, and my today's objectives is actually really quite simple. If you look at that, it's just today and P1. Now I don't have overdue in here simply because I won't allow tasks to be overdue. When I get to the end of the day, even if I'm absolutely exhausted, I will go into my Todoist on my phone and reschedule anything that I haven't done. So I don't ever really get overdue tasks. So the filter for that is just today and P1. Then we have my today's focus. Now today's oops, I did that wrong. Sorry, just go back in there. So today's focus is a little bit more involved, but it is still quite simple. You can copy that. It's today and exclamation mark P4. Now the exclamation mark in Todoist speak means not. So today and not P4. I don't need to see my P4s in my focused task because, well, yeah, this is focused work. Anything that's unflagged is as and when, if I have time at the end of the day. And then the final one is my today's focus, so tomorrow's focus. Now this is 2 days and P1. So this is where I would pick up any of my overdue tasks. So it's 2 days and exclamation mark P4. Now, if I go into tomorrow's focus, this one is where I go at the end of the day when I'm doing my planning. So you'll see in here that I've got tomorrow here, clear YouTube comments, which will come up tomorrow. I've also got my today task because I've actually added 2 days. So to do days means today and tomorrow. The reason being is I can quickly go into this filter and see anything that might be overdue at the end of the day, because there shouldn't be any today tasks in there. So this is really where I go at the end of the day to plan the next day. So if you are interested in learning more about the time sector system, I have just updated the time sector system this year. It's the 5th anniversary since I created the first course on this. It is a superb course. It will show you how to set this up, not just in Todoist, but it will show you how to set it up in any task manager. So if I haven't convinced you to use Todoist, then don't worry, you can use the time sector system in pretty much any task manager. It's much more than just managing a task manager because it brings in your notes and it brings in your goals and many other things. But there you go. That is my late 2025 Todoist setup. And I have to be honest, when I look at this now, over the last, say, 5 years since I've been doing these setup videos, I haven't really changed this much in the last certainly 3 or 4 years. I think I've used the Organising by Writing, Communications and Admin. That is just a game changer for me because it just removed any chance of overwhelm, and it is superb. I hope you got a lot out of this. Please, if you have any questions at all, you can leave them in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer them. And if you want to see what I was doing in the early part of 2025 with Todoist, then this video up here is the one to watch next.